Welcome to Rise from Lausanne, Switzerland, where daily COVID numbers are 5 and 6 times what they were back in March, and the government has instituted a series of strict new regulations, calling into question what's on everybody's mind: what will this future ski season be like? I am Professor Demian Hodari of EHL Lausanne.
And from lovely London, as always, my name is Mendiratta, thrilled to be alongside Professor Hodari in Lausanne. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone watching from around the world. We are, as always, incredibly grateful to be able to have you join us every single week. Who would have thought, Demian, that 21 episodes ago, in April, when the Easter Bunny was making his travel rounds around the world, we would be sitting 21 episodes later talking about Rise. It's amazing how Rise has been such a mirror of this year, giving us a sense of what exactly is going on in the world around us. We're into season 2. We're talking about the next normal, all of us trying to figuring out going back to class, going back to work, staying in our flats as a work from home basis. And it's been incredibly challenging. Why? Because everything just seems completely mixed up, which is why we thought, why don't we mix it up this week? And to do so, we thought we'd have some really interesting focuses on how our next normal is changing by having to look at the model and mix it up for the future. As we do that, and as we say that, and before I hand it over to Professor Hodari, please do, everyone, send us through your questions. We want to know what you think about the world ahead and how we can help through Rise, which is for you, about you, and with you in making sense of the next normal. Send us through your questions. We'll make sure our great guests answer them, give us the answers we need so that we can make sense of it all. So Demian, mixing it up a little bit, what's going on this week?
Yeah, well, we thought it was interesting. In the past, we've looked at different areas of the industry. We've looked at airlines, we've looked at travel, we've looked at hotels. But really what seems to be happening is all these are converging together in new ways, especially hotels and co-working and other forms of travel and resorts and retail. So we wanted to look at with some of the experts on how this is evolving and how the COVID crisis has accelerated this trend and whether it's long lasting or it's all going to go away once the virus hopefully is eradicated. So we've got some guests to look at that as we mix things up a little bit on the show. But before we get to them, as always, we've got a bunch of things for you. And our first thing is poll number 1. So we're hoping that you'll take a moment here and answer the following question for us, please. All right, so most people do not think a full lockdown is going to be instituted in their areas. I don't know if I agree. I'm seeing high numbers and peaks again, and I think we're on the way there. Maybe not as strict as back in March and April, but pretty damn close.
But look at 60 to 80%. That's almost 1 in 3 people that are asked are actually giving us that result. What I find fascinating is that no one has a clue. And that uncertainty has a direct impact on every single aspect of our lives. That's very telling how spread out it is. And 7%, almost 1 in 10 already in lockdown. That's concerning. So Thank you as ever for everyone sharing.
It helps having this global audience. So obviously people are answering from different areas, but it's curious to see those extremes. Either absolutely would not, or we're almost certainly going to go into that lockdown. Like you said, nobody really knows.
What we always do every single week is get a sense of where in the world are we? Because exactly as we've seen with that last poll, things are changing so quickly. This is one thing that I thought was really interesting, was to get a sense of what is the domestic activity that is fueling economic recovery? Because as we've been saying for the last several months, not even weeks, the value of travel and tourism is not just the emotional feed it gives us and the sense of engagement with the world, it unlocks supply chains. I thought this was very interesting in terms of domestic tourism and how it's growing region by region. But I want to call out particularly the light blue line and also the darker blue underneath it, Asia Pacific. I specifically call this out as initially, truth be told, when I sent these charts through for today, I thought this was interesting because it's also a reflection of how many countries have shut down and are not allowing international travel. But literally minutes before we went live, a news release came out from Australia and saying that with the borders closing in July to international travel, Qantas, which is the primary aviation artery into Australia, has just announced that they don't anticipate international travel resuming until Q4 2021.
Wow.
A year from now. And that's what I enjoyed the fact that, you know, your eyes widened, Demian, because it shows how every single day things are changing. But what I find is that when an airline says we can't let international travel in, that's a whole economic re-engineering, because we know the value of international travel in terms of yield because of the daily spend. I thought this was interesting. It's fabulous that domestic tourism is growing, but very scary that international travel is being predicted only later in 2021 based on vaccines. Over to you.
Yeah, the economic crisis that's going to, it's already here, but it's going to follow this health crisis is going to be phenomenal. Look, here, Sarah and I, we put together this chart. We took TSA throughput, which is the blue line, which is the number of people that are going through security in the US. And we superimposed that with the number of new COVID cases per day in the USA. And there were a couple of things here that I thought were interesting. First, clearly the little icons that Sarah chose here to mark some specific holidays in the US: Easter, 4th of July, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. And you can see peaks in the COVID numbers following those holidays. And that can be partly as well, you can see the travel is increasing during those periods as well. And I don't want to say, oh, travel is leading to more COVID cases, but these family reunions, these events, what people are gathering around these holidays and maybe traveling to, you know, there's definitely a relationship there. And we can also see that as COVID numbers peaked, we would see a flattening of the travel. For example, if you look at late summer, it leveled off as numbers were increasing in the USA. And as we see numbers, surpassing, we had the record number of cases in the USA just a couple of days ago. I'm just forecasting, as I think it's logical, a flattening of that curve of the travel number again as those COVID numbers increase. So that relationship between COVID and travel, as you mentioned just in the previous slide, it's clearly there and something we need to keep an eye on for our industry.
And it's so important you raise this point. I must say, Demian, I love this chart. I love the fact that you've put this in because it shows how hungry people are to be together again. This is majority domestic travel if it's TSA, but it shows how desperate people are to connect again. And travel is directly linked, as we know, to the mental health crisis that's taking place because of COVID-19. Really good point. And that takes us perfectly into our next chart. And this is from PATA, which is Pacific Asia Travel Association, coming out of Asia. And they did some research recently around what is it that travelers are looking at when it looks at going out at traveling again. Right through, it's all about COVID-19 being respected as the primary issue right now. As we've said on Rise from the beginning, this is not an economic crisis. This is not a travel and tourism crisis. It is a healthcare crisis that has caused the other crises coming out of it. But what I thought was interesting is the third one, it's 71.6%, in that people, before they travel, are taking a look at how the countries they are wanting to travel to are respecting the protocols. Because ultimately, if you're going to a destination, i.e. the States, as you're saying, if people are excited to be back together again and they're risking their own health because of social contact, what does that say about how ultimately businesses are responding to it and societies at large? I thought that was very interesting. So care is still coming first.
Yeah, we had similar results from one of our polls, I think back in season 1, when we asked people about what was on their minds and concerns as they were planning their summer travels, and that came up as well. So it's clearly a major issue. I've got one more slide for you. And this is a number, it's 30%, negative 30%. And this is what Moody's found to be the change in appraisal value of 117 hotels that they looked at. They looked at the value of the hotel in the initial appraisal when the hotel was being underwritten. And then they looked at it now a few weeks ago and tried to find, is there any relationship? Can we determine how much value hotels have lost or in some cases gained during the crisis? And this is extremely important for everybody that works in transactions and in consulting and trying to lend money for hotels that may need refinancing or for new hotel projects. And they found on average a median of a negative 30%. So a 30% drop in the value of those 117 hotels they looked at. And clearly they saw bigger drops in those hotels that are in large cities, that are meetings and events hotels, and they found less of a drop. In fact, in some places, an increase in value in hotels that are closer to these essential services, hospitals or government facilities, more remote areas, and some destinations that they think will have long-term appeal. So it doesn't mean that every hotel has lost 30% value, but for those of us that research this or work in this area, it's the first comparable numbers that I've seen pre and post COVID. And I've been looking for this. So I was excited to find it. Not very happy with the number clearly, but happy to see that people are finding some way to provide advice to people in this area.
Indeed, such an important part. I'm really pleased you mentioned that one. So, Professor Hodari, all of these questions, all of these uncertainties, 30-second challenge. Over to you.
All right. My question for you is, I don't know anybody in the world who speaks at more conferences than you do, sometimes 4 or 5 a day, and you're speaking in places in Africa, Asia, Americas, Europe. Clearly, we know that there is no unified approach to travel during this period. Different countries have different policies. And I'm wondering, what's one thing you've learned specifically about how some countries or regions are handling this that you wish other places would adopt?
It's a lovely question, and thank you very much. I must admit, as soon as you started asking this question, I could get a sense of where it was going. I thought Asia. And I had a conversation with one of my CNN clients a few months ago from the region itself. And what really shocked me, Demian, was that as much as they rely on tourism, they're an island destination. It's not about them wanting to make sure tourists feel safe coming to the island. The people of the island are fearful of the tourists bringing in the virus. And I think to answer your question, and I'm sure I'm over 30 seconds, is the importance of recognizing the 360-degree circle of travel and tourism and hospitality, that it's both directions. And I would hope that destinations look at it not from just we're throwing our doors open. Do we have the airlift to get there? Do we have the protocols as a society to bring people there? Are we putting out the invitation? And are we recognizing that we need to respect their fears as much as their excitement? And backwards, that would be my wish. Travel and tourism is not about the travel and the tourists. It's about what it does to the people of countries, positive and negative. And that's a 360 model we need to adopt. So
Right.
Speaking of 360-degree models, sir, we're talking about mixing it up. And one of the beauties about Rise is that we've all been able to be very honest about the surrealness of this year. You've mixed it up. You've got your work, we're in your flat, we're in your home, sorry, we're in your office, your plant has stayed alive, which is fantastic. Now you're doing a hybrid model of teaching. You open the door and you've got your kids and your family on the other side of the door. In mixing it up, we're profoundly blurring the lines between the normal boundaries of our headspaces, keeping the work Demian aside from the play Demian, aside from the dad Demian, from the husband Demian. How are you able to make sure the blur stays somewhat separated so that Demian can just be Demian when he wants to and walk around in his big yellow Rise slippers?
I don't know if I've been that successful at it. I think one thing we've learned during this period is that we need to manage our time wisely and not always be working and create those niches of time for us. So I think what I've always liked about this job is the flexibility. So, I have to be in class when there's class. I can't say, okay, we're not gonna have class today because there's something else I want to do. But when I'm not in class, I can manage my time. So maybe one day I need more time for the family or something for me, and I'll work harder. I worked a bunch yesterday for EHL. It was a Sunday, but I didn't mind because I'm taking off a day later this week. And so I think it's about accepting that responsibility that we need to manage our time, manage our own agendas. And many people have been forced into this flexibility, sort of forced upon them and finding their ways through it. And I think I've been lucky that I've had this flexibility for going on 20 years. So I think that's.
I must say, one thing I love about what you're saying, Demian, is that now's not the time to be a martyr. It's not the time to be a work martyr, a professor martyr. If you need your time off, you need your time off. Simple.
My golf handicap is never going to go down if I don't take a little time for me. So
stunning.
For sure.
Excellent. Yay, one of my favorite parts of the program.
All right, we've got a few headlines for you. We haven't shared these with the other yet, as always, and just what's been going on in the news. I found this interesting, and not any particular headline, but the fact that I've seen so many, and here are just three, about the way hospitality companies are going about trying to generate sales, right? It's all about creating some revenue right now. And this subscription model seems to be something that's taking root in some organizations. And here you have a couple examples of that. And this is basically saying, hey, pay us a fixed amount and then use our service, our hotel or our co-working space or our lobby or our shared accommodation as much as you want. But give us that revenue, whether or not you're going to use it or not. And yeah, we may lose money on a per night basis, but at least we've got some guaranteed revenue coming in and we've got some business and some people there to provide work for our employees and hopefully tip them, et cetera. So what I like is hospitality companies not just sitting still and wallowing in the misery that we've got right now, but trying to find ways through this. And Citizen M is a leading company that's always doing such innovative things. And Mike was on the show back in, I think, episode 2 or 3. And it's just another example of them trying new things. And maybe they won't all work, but kudos to all these organizations for trying something new.
Stunning.
And my second one, it's not really about hospitality, but I love this one. It was, how much do you really miss going to the movies? And I love this article and this idea because it's something that I've been curious about, which is how much are we changing as people due to this crisis, right? We've always, been staying home, watching more Netflix, more TV maybe than we used to, but now because of this, do I really need to go to the movies anymore? Do I really need to go back to the office? Do I really need to take that business trip? Do I really need to travel? And I think we're not going to have answers to these questions for a while, but if I was a sociologist, I would just be fascinated with studying how we are changing our pattern of behavior as a result of this crisis. And I think for the hospitality industry, that counts a lot on people moving, coming to places and leaving their home. It's going to be interesting to see.
Oh, absolutely. Great, great, great choices. And again, we don't see each other. So it's interesting to see how different they can be and yet how they connect. I thought that was interesting. So my 2 choices, of course, I know you love aviation, so I had to throw in aviation. This made me so happy. This came out last week. And basically it was the first UK testing at Heathrow for flights to Hong Kong and flights to Milan. Absolutely magic. Short-term testing to allow people to safely get on the plane and confidently get on the plane. Why is this so exciting? The vaccine is not the deal breaker to global economic and travel and tourism recovery. It's testing. We know that 50% of people won't even take the vaccine. That's choice. But if you're getting on the plane, you're having the test. And I thought the fact that A, the test has been established, B, it's being tested, sorry, pardon the pun, and rolled out. But see, this could become something that people really feel, okay, at the finish line, I can take the test and then get on the plane. Absolutely fantastic. That is, to me, such good news for our sector. So very happy child. I had to share that. And I thought this next one was really interesting. And saying that from Skift, every tech investor on the planet wants to invest in virtual events. We've talked about this at the beginning. How much are we going to live through the Zoom world? And ironically, I've literally just come off a 7,000 people summit taking place, the Future of Hospitality Summit, linked to the G20 in Saudi Arabia right now. It's a cocktail, it's a virtual event, and it's a live event between Saudi and the rest of the world. Amazing. That's just the way it's going to be. And as you and I have discussed, Demian, it's not just because people are unable to travel so they can connect through the system. The optics are so critical. Destinations, companies don't want to be seen spending huge amounts of money to execute these events in a destination when those destinations have laid people off, companies have laid them off. It's just not the right time for that overt spend. So I thought this was fascinating because this is an indication of the fact that this virtual connectivity is here to stay. The degree of it, 100% versus 10%, we're still figuring it out. But I thought this was really, really interesting and a good indicator of the world.
And I think it'll be interesting to see going forward with the future of these events, which of the organizations that are going to dominate this space are going to have been existing event companies that have been able to pivot and maybe do some relationships with technology companies, and who's going to be completely new players that really just come in from the technology and say, we can figure out the event side if we've got the right technology. So hopefully some of these existing firms that have put on some great events in the past are going to find their footing in this new world.
Very indicative. So in terms of my little video, you're going to be very, very pleased to hear, Demian, that yay, it's aviation, and it's 10 seconds.
10 seconds, I like. All right.
Seconds. But I thought this was really interesting. I first saw this on my mobile phone when I was going through in the morning. Sorry, admittedly, we do it as soon as we wake up before we even turn off the alarm. But this came in my Twitter feed. And then I picked it up online through the computer because I wanted to get the video downloaded. But I thought it was brilliant. And it was how an airline is looking differently at how we look at ourselves in this world, and then connecting it to October being Oktoberfest. Enjoy. 10 seconds, don't blink. Gotta admit, that was a pretty good 10 seconds. I thought that was really, really smart how one industry is converting its communication into another.
Yeah.
Because again, we're all having to mix it up. So mix it up. I thought that was really smart. Does that give me a 50-second credit for next week?
No, you still owe me probably about an hour's worth of excessively long videos over the year.
ALM video again.
All right, let's do our second poll before we bring on our executives in residence for this week. And as always, we try to create our second poll linked a little bit to the topic of the day, just mixing it up. So here you go. All right, Anita, more bar and restaurant subscription. So that's linking a little bit to that idea, right? Pay a fixed amount and then go to this place as much as you want. Business services and rooms as office space. So that'll be clearly something we're going to talk about with our guests later. A little bit of everything, right? And I think it's basically going to, there's a lot of things hotels can do to become more important players in the local market. I know Accor had been pushing for this for a while. I think they backed off this idea a little bit, but you've got these buildings, they're in great locations, they're staffed, they have all these facilities and all these services they provide, and why are they not providing it more to locals and not just to guests? And I'm wondering if that idea that's been sort of percolating in the industry is going to explode now with the current pandemic.
Especially when you marry business services and office space, that's 70% of people. That's really interesting. I love it. I have to say, admit dry cleaning, 10%. My dry cleaning expenses this year have hit the floor because we're not going anywhere requiring dry cleaning. It's still from the waist up and then shorts and socks from the waist down. So
sure.
That people
maybe one day you'll show us that. All right, so let's see what our executives in residence today have to say about this. We've got two great executives, one of which oddly seems to have the same last name as myself. So before I ask you guys to introduce yourselves, the results you just saw from the second poll, maybe Marloes, any observation on that?
No, I think it's not just the hardware piece. I think the subscription piece is like one of the interesting pieces. I think it's people, one of the biggest problems in this corona time is loneliness. And I think when you look at it, it's not just we want to share the hotel space. It's just what is close by to home. Where can we go and connect with others?
Thanks. And Jamie, any observation on that?
I mean, for me, running, we can talk about what the business does, but I think for a business right now, every time you can say subscription, it's subscription revenue, you have subscription customers, you're always getting investors and sort of partners to push you towards that. And it's interesting to see from the consumer side that people are saying, or from the industry side, that something like restaurant subscriptions is exciting. I think we should, I'm dying to talk more about that. You talked a little bit about this thus far, but hospitality is not a sector I associate with subscriptions that much, despite the fact that the whole world has moved subscription. If this is a window to something broader that's going to happen in hospitality, that's something I find really curious and interesting.
Okay, great answers. All right, for our audience, I'd like you to each introduce yourselves, 30 seconds or less. Jamie, tell us about what Industrious is all about.
So we're the largest premium workplace provider in the US. We basically, allow companies to buy their employees' workplace experience as a product from us instead of doing it themselves. And so we have a co-working brand, we run companies' headquarters for them. We're in about 55 cities in the US, but if not, we're just starting our international expansion in earnest. In fact, we're announcing our first international location, I think, next Monday.
You don't want
And
to
I'm Demian's
pre-announce
brother.
it here.
I feel like
Okay.
I've had this secret advisor as I built this business behind the scenes, and it's exciting that I don't know. I'm looking forward to this in part for that reason.
Thanks. Marlos, a little bit about Curtin Hospitality.
We're a mixed use operator in the lifestyle segment, and mixed use for us is long-term, short-term stay together with a working component. And then we complement that with entertainment, restaurants, wellness, retail. We are open in 6 places at the moment, 6 openings, first 6 months of next year, and another 20 in the pipeline. So it's a busy year, I would say, to say the least.
Thank you. Anita?
Brilliant. Yes, please. Marlos, I just want to just look at yourself for a moment. Firstly, I love your Zoom bombing behind you. That's quite nice. Who you've got looking at you from over your shoulder. But I'm curious.
Yes, good. Yes.
I enjoyed reading up about you, admittedly. I'm a consultant, that's what I do. You're a foodie at heart. You started very young as a foodie. I'd love to understand, when you look at the whole serviced offices and the offering, how has your food background actually strengthened your ability and Curtin's ability to create this new offering? How does it made a difference?
Interesting. I love that question. Wow. Actually, it's you know what I always loved about the food industry, that it was so quickly developing, and it was taking any trends in any locality, and there was so much creativity. And then when you brought that back to my hotel career, we weren't doing none of that. You know, everything was pretty dinosaur and pretty, you know, rigid and the same way. And I think what we are allowed to do now, or how that background helps, is you just really look at it from that entire customer journey. And you really look at it from the beginning till the end. And you don't look at it from the operator perspective, but you look at it from the owner's perspective or the consumer. And then you fit the other pieces together versus what I want to do, and then try to fit that.
Which makes a lot of sense as to why you've been such a success in the Middle East, because your sensitivity of local clearly has impacted global brands coming in.
But I think one of the things that we've always, when you look at the brands, when I swapped from my corporate career to this, was one of the things we were always looking was exclusive. Clubs, exclusive offering, the whole environment had to change to us. Where one of the things I always said, and now even more than ever, it's us adapting to wherever we open, and we have a responsibility to where we add more supply, not just because we want to do another hotel, or, you know, this whole, it comes down to sustainability, but you connect with where you are, which means that the question of what exactly is the perfect mix of mixed use or location doesn't exist. It's totally location based.
That's great.
Thanks, Marlos. I guess I'll ask Jamie Hodari a question. Neither of you use the word co-working. And is there a reason for that? Is that being associated too much with a failed large company, or is it being misused? And then, so that's the first part of the question, Jamie. The second is, the key question for me is, how has that industry changed over the last 6 months, and where do you see it going in the next six months, or let's say the next couple of years?
So on the question of the word co-working, I think for us, that's a specific product line. It refers to relatively small, 10-person teams and below, where a lot of the resources are shared. You have your private office of your own, but you share a lounge, you share focus rooms, you share experiences with other companies. And in the end, that's not that meaningful to most customers. Like when the word co-working arose, it was because the presumption was what people really wanted was to interact with people from other companies and to meet people from the social media firm across the hall. And the real action here is that the kind of outsourcing dynamic, the fact that people are essentially saying, instead of building out, constructing running my workplaces myself. I'm just going to buy them as a service from someone. And for that reason, I think the fact that co-working leans on the co in co-working, it's not a misnomer, it just misses what it's really about, which is about workplace as a service. As far as what the workplace as a service industry has seen over the last 6 months, it's a complicated period. So first, this is one of these COVID, kind of short-term COVID headwind, long-term COVID tailwind type industries. There's no question, if you're a workplace provider right now, in a lot of countries, 8% of people are going to work, 15% of people are going to work. On the other hand, it's very clear the same language is being used in Germany, in the US, in Argentina, which is that shift towards more distributed ways of working, where employees can work from home sometimes, can work from headquarters sometimes, can work from a local office sometimes. And of course that, unless you're JP Morgan or British Airways and can afford to have 80 different offices, that can only be accomplished via a partner, via different products that allow you to sort of consume workplaces as a product. And so I think us and our competitors have had to navigate the moment at hand while preparing for that future and for companies to start making those decisions.
Okay, and you guys have made a relationship with a hotel company to take, I think it's some floors in their hotel and turn them into offices. Can you talk a little bit about that and why hotels, and is that a long-term relationship for you and for the industry?
So we started with one hotel in Brooklyn. It was an experiment. It went much better than we could have expected. Then we we added a hotel group called Proper Hotels, which is, under Marriott's design hotels, and they're particularly high end, very beautifully designed in a bunch of cities in the US, and that's going very well. And now we're running an RFP process, primarily for Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, and a few of the other, larger platforms to pick our partner to do this with on a grander scale. The short-term premise is converting hotel rooms into offices. It's nothing more complicated than that. And I think for the moment, it's confusing for customers. You don't associate a hotel room with, it still feels like a hotel. On the other hand, nobody wants to work in an open floor plan office right now. I mean, I imagine most of your viewers don't want to go and sit in a giant open floor plan office and wear a mask or kind of be in a room with 200 other people. And for better or worse, in Europe and the US, most offices are now not, sort of comprised of mostly private offices. They're large open floor plan offices. So the fact that a hotel can offer a private sort of space of your own, almost like your boss's corner office, has proven to be, I think, quite appealing to customers. Again, it's logistically complicated. There's a lot of customer education necessary. I'm happy to get into where it's gone well and where it hasn't. But the fundamental premise, it's very much of the moment. I'm not sure what it will look like post, once things return more to normal.
Can you see a more young audience? Sorry, I'm super curious now. Can you see more young audience doing that or not? Because you're still going into a bedroom, correct? It's still, unless you have a glass wall, you're still kind of going in a bedroom.
It hasn't skewed young. I think part of it is a lot of hotels have tried to do this on their own. Yeah, right. They've sort of put their hotel rooms on. Part of the purpose of working with a workplace provider is we make the necessary transformation that it does, once you're in there, it does feel like an audience. So then you need to do the advertising, the imagery, et cetera, to help the customer understand in advance. It's not going to be like when you go to a conference and the bed is flipped up against the wall or something like that.
I want to pick up on that because Marloes, you said something really, really interesting at the very beginning of this, and it links to something that we showed. It was one of my headlines 2 weeks ago, with a hotel in Singapore that's moved work from home to work from hotel, where they give the day passes for the lobby lounge and the whole bit. And you spoke, Marloes, about loneliness and the fact that these ideas are opening up because people are dealing with, again, the mental health crisis, not just of the general public, but of their staff as well. And then it marries what you said to what Jamie's just said, that you can't just, to your point, lift the bed, put it vertically, and then plug in a desk and think it's an office. All of those, where does someone go for a coffee? Where do they go to stretch their legs? That is all. How do you see, even if the short term of COVID-19 is 18 to 24 months, how do you see hotels reaching out more now to what you both provide for the short and medium term? Are you feeling that that pull in any way? Marloes?
I think this is something that was starting already before this year. And so when we, for example, to refer to you saying Future Hospitality Summit, when we signed Saudi 3 years, almost 4 years ago, we had a discussion already at that time to take out the whole meeting floor, because meeting occupancies are what, 30–35% if you do a good job. And for the rest, you would never do this with bedrooms. Any owner would pretty much, bonjour you out as soon as they see the figures. So when we started talking, it was a bit too innovative, where what we always said is when you go to a city, and that's also to the word co-working was always for the young generation who wake up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, can't pay too much. And so it was this word that was associated not with a more mature business audience. When we decided to really take out and strip that whole floor and put private offices, so you book a room and an office, it becomes something very different. It becomes a really different offering, because all of a sudden you can stay in a place longer. You can set up your meetings because you don't have to travel. You don't have to figure out where to go for dinner, etc. And we looked at the subscription model the other way around, as how can you then utilize everybody around you back into your building? And I think this is going to stay. I think it's just a very short term, let's just convert some rooms and just make it look semi-okay, which I think you can't do a meeting in a bedroom when there is even some form of bed and you have the bathroom the way it is. And, culturally, you might be able to do this in some, open countries, but you can't take this everywhere. But I think the principle of it, of connecting and having a place to work and having a place to collaborate and exchanging, if that's knowledge or goods or whatever else, is really happening at a very different level. And I think that's why for us we refer to serviced office, because it's office with services. It's not just a place to do something together. And it comes to like the digital nomad piece, correct? I mean, 1-2 years ago it was the hippies, and just the Gen Z who's still supposed to come. Now we're all doing it. I mean, who of us hasn't said, oh yeah, I've just picked up my house for a month, because it doesn't really matter where I am unless you have to send your kids to school. They're online schooling. Everybody just needs a place to work. You almost need just a Zoom room and that's it. So I think it's absolutely there to stay, and it will evolve to something much more sophisticated.
And Jamie, on your side?
First, I would say hotels with private offices, that to me is the amenity to beat all amenities. I imagine that's going to be the new version of the rooftop pool or something like that. And it's not just about a digital nomad. You travel to Chicago or Zurich for business and you're there for 2 days and you have a meeting at 10 a.m. and a meeting at 5 p.m. Under normal circumstances, what you go and work at a coffee shop, you go back to the hotel and sit in your room. For a lot of just vanilla, nothing special, don't even know what digital nomad means, business people, if the hotel had a private office for them, that would be an enormous sort of amenity that solved an actual business problem for them in a way that a rooftop pool might be nice, but doesn't necessarily solve a concrete problem. I think for us, the points of tangency with hotels begin a little bit with that. There is a every city has the most luxurious hotel, the hippest hotel, the sexiest hotel, the most fun hotel. There aren't a lot of hotels that say we're the most productive hotel in this city. We are experts in how workers work, what makes them engaged, when they get the most done. In this hotel, from the type of night's sleep you have to how you spend your day here, is going to be engineered around productivity. I suspect that value prop is going to sort of be, I imagine will be a winner for certain hotel brands. Two other things. One is, so we run workplaces in all different sorts of settings. And when we started the business 7 years ago, it's as you'd predict. An industrious on the 30th floor of a gorgeous Class A office tower would tend to price higher and outperform an industrious on the 3rd floor of a building. And at the most extreme, we have industriouses in malls, and you would expect that an industrious in a mall would perform the worst of all. And over the last 7 years, it flipped. Now, the highest priced, highest performing industriouses are the workplaces that are in malls, that are attached to hotels, and the stuff on the 27th floor and this is a relatively short time period we're talking about, tend to underperform. Because what happened is fewer and fewer people want to walk in the door at 9 a.m., go up to the 30th floor, sit at desk 31, and 10 hours later go down. They want to pop in, pop out, go to their yoga class, do their grocery shopping, come back for one last hour of work and go out. And therefore, workplaces that are integrated into settings that feel more like the other parts of their life, or that have more in common with the other parts of their life, are going to succeed relative to ones on the 30th floor of the office building. And hotels feel like the last uncharted territory on that front. So I'm excited not just for the kind of taking over hotel rooms, but for the sort of broader integration that I think is coming. I had a few other thoughts, but I realized I talked for too long, so I'll save them for a
No, but
future
it's really
question.
cool because if you add the residential piece to this and you add the retail piece, you know, it's all about the use of square meters, correct? The only reason why we started our own serviced office brand is because everybody thought we were pretty much going crazy combining the pieces, well, which is now 5 years ago. But what you're saying, you know, it's like the productivity, you know, there's a different reason. It's all about collaboration, correct? Because the only way this is going to work is if the hotel brand actually understands that there's this shift and therefore is willing to work together with somebody that has an individual brand because it complements and it's not just another thing that we can copy paste, stick it in and kind of hope that it will work well. So it's really intriguing listening to you.
I want to jump.
Is that what your company does? Do you bring in sort of different brands, or everything is housed under?
No, we collaborate. So we own our own brands. We own our own boutique luxury, but lifestyle mid-market. We do it for service apartments, branded residences, hotels, and for the office piece. But the one thing that I've always said, I mean, we only developed our own F&B because we couldn't find what we wanted. But I really believe in when you have a successful brand or you have somebody doing something really well, you bring in different target audiences. It's just how much willingness to collaboration is there, because unless you connect systems, unless you're willing to talk, you know, opening APIs, unless you're willing to talk about any of these, the customer experience just pretty much sucks if, you know, you have just 3 components in a building that still you have to go with 3 different codes of the Wi-Fi because who's going to pay for it? So yes, because I genuinely believe that even the all-day dining, for example, in Jeddah, the owner's taken a franchise of an incredible brand, Baker and Spice, and we manage it because it just brings a totally different value and it brings what people want versus, you know, the same thing with the X that we've been serving for 20 years and nobody wants. So yes, absolutely, 100%.
Pick on a word that Jamie just said a moment ago as well, which I thought was really interesting. And it goes to what Marloes, you're saying, productivity. There are a lot of people that are struggling right now because they don't have the positions, they don't know what's going to happen. But equally, there are a lot of people right now that are almost suffering from overproductivity because there's no line between work and play. So to your point, Jamie, places that allow people to have that stimulus thrown at them as a default element of all of our worlds, the radius has been reduced dramatically. So to have the opportunity to just walk past a coffee shop and see another human being on the way to work, I'm tired of working 16 hours a day. I want an excuse not to. So that's an interesting flip of the dynamic. Productivity is not necessarily the issue. It's overproductivity. How do you give it some oxygen? Demian, you might want to join in because we're just kind of monopolizing the
No, I love that Marloes and Jamie are engaging in the conversation. I think that's perfect and what we've always wanted here. I guess I had one kind of question for both of you, which was, and you got it a little bit now. You know, we've got a lot of hotel companies, Jamie, that are trying to start their own office businesses, right? And some of these boutique brands, and now they've come out with their own. Probably, you know, to a certain degree, assuming, well, we understand service, we understand our customers. This is not so different. We can do this. We've seen businesses fail in the past that have tried to diversify like that. Do you see a lot of competition coming from those brands? Are they going to recognize that this is a different business and they're better off working? Going back to Marloes' point about this collaboration.
I'm so biased here. Take whatever I have to say with a grain of salt. I don't think they'll be successful. I think ultimately, first off, we've seen a lot of the big global office sort of owners, British Land, Tishman Speyer, attempt to do this. and it hasn't gone well. And they're closer to what it means to sort of deliver a workplace than Hyatt is. And importantly, if you're going to deliver an employee's workplace experience to Bain or to to Pfizer, that's a big deal. There's a reason why this is the last domino to fall. If over the years of sort of corporate outsourcing, people handed off manufacturing to someone, they handed off data storage, but to hand off what it feels like to walk into work every day as a McKinsey employee is very close to the bone of what McKinsey is. And for Hyatt to say, we are the experts in productivity and worker engagement, and we understand what makes for a productive day at work, is, I think, a little too far outside the core competency of the hotel groups, and not really credible as something that they would be able to do on their own. Not to mention the fact that the buying pattern tends to be platform level. We're going to hand off 7 cities to a provider, so it's hard to do at any individual property. But I think they'll do it in partnership, just like F&B and other things. So it's not, hotels will get into this, but I suspect that people who say we're just going to try to capture every dollar of revenue ourselves and develop this competency 100% ourselves, it won't be worth it. It won't be worth saving the 4% management fee or something that you would get from integrating into a larger platform.
Thanks.
Demian, sadly, I'm getting notes from the Wizards of Oz that we need to start pulling it together. So last questions.
Last questions. This a quick answer from Jamie and a little bit more from Marloes. Jamie, you guys switched from leases, or I don't know if you fully switched, to more the hotel management contract. So there, you've learned something from the hotel industry and you've applied it to office rental. What else have you learned from hospitality, from hotels, that is helping you in the co-working? And then to Marloes as well, how are you guys sharing learning and knowledge across the different sides of the business?
The number one thing by far is what you just mentioned. 3 years ago, we stopped signing leases with landlords, and we basically took hotel management agreements. We changed a couple of the words, and other than that, they're identical, and it transformed the business. It transformed the risk profile, it transformed the capital efficiency, and it transformed, the actual way the market perceives the business. A few other things. One is, to this point about people working from home a couple of days a week, coming into the office 1 or 2 days. If you move to that fractional use, where someone isn't going to the same spot all day, every day, offices traditionally aren't good at that. That's not what they're built for. They're built for you to sit in the same seat always. Hotels, on the other hand, restaurants, are made to deliver a wonderful experience to someone who walked in that day, walked out at the end the next morning, and might not be back for 7 months. So that ability to deliver an elevated experience in a sort of fractional or sort of intermittent way, I think we've learned a lot from. And then the final one is, you want to make workers feel seen. You want to make them feel looked out for. That's hard to do if you're running a workplace with 700 employees, 500 employees. And I think the hospitality industry has done much better than anyone else at making the Four Seasons employees seem magical. They know your name. They remember what your favorite drink was. They know that you have 3 kids, so they're going to meet you at the elevator when you're checking out. And that's obviously built on digital systems and control of information in the background that feels magical to the customer, but obviously has a lot of sort of furiously paddling below the surface. And we've applied a lot of that in an office setting, and that in particular, every time you do it, you see NPS scores rise. You see worker happiness or worker engagement rise. Great
answer. Marloes, what else are you guys learning across the business?
No, I just think, to Jamie's point, I think is you have boutique hotels and you have the Hilton, correct? So you have Bain and you have, the kind of not even startup environments, but the small and mid-sized kind of companies. And I think there is a place for both. So do I think that, for example, hotels are going to become the best service office providers? No, I don't think that. But I really think that the service office providers that are doing a really good job at the moment are going to get such scale that for smaller and mid-sized companies or hotel, one, they will not have the time anymore to pay the attention. So what do you then do? You get a subscription to sign up to a platform to share some offices, and then you have grade A, B, C, and then I like this hotel and I don't like that hotel. I think it's a bit like the whole lobby conversation where, you know, everybody started transforming the lobby for the last 2 years and everybody can work. The only thing everybody forgot was the plugs. It looks beautiful, but there's no plugs. You know, it just, that kind of piece I don't think works, but I think everybody learns, correct? I mean, when the Hiltons and Marriott started, I'm pretty sure they used to say the same thing. No, nobody else except us can run hotels. And now everybody has a boutique brand. Booking.com came, and you can pretty much be a hotel operator with YouTube, Google, Booking.com, and, you know, a bit of common sense. Can you always succeed? No, obviously not. But I really think there is so much space in the competitive world still. It's such a kind of new business that I think we're just looking at hotel and work at the moment, this kind of hybrid hospitality. But when you take it to the mixed use piece, I would say, you take this for F&B, you take this into your neighborhood, you take this into residential. Like, we're only talking about 2 components of the whole pie of hospitality, correct? And then you see what the airline industry is going to do. You know, it's so funny, like people transforming their aircrafts to restaurants. Yeah, it's the worst place to work is the plane. I mean, I've done mostly night flights because at least the sleep is not as bad as the working, and just you continue the next day. But you complement all of those in hospitality. I think there is still so much potential that I think in our, well, even the generation coming after us, we cannot max out. So I think there's a lot of space still.
It's true, because the next normal of our COVID-19 world is all about bubbles. And I don't just mean champagne, but we're living in bubbles. So before I hand over to you, Demian, I'm gonna wish MARLOES incredible success on the G20 stage this afternoon. I know you've got a couple hours to go. Anyone who wants to watch, it's the Future of Hospitality Summit through the G20. Please go online and do register, because I'm sure it'll be fabulous. But I have a question for you, Jamie. My last question.
Oh, no.
One of the great things about RISE has been the opportunity to work with Demian. I knew him officially as a guest lecturer at EHL when he kindly invited me twice, but I've discovered so much about him during this year. And so my question to you is, has he always been a grouch?
I was 8 years old. I got really into trivia. And Demian, I thought, was trying to help me out to play into this new love of mine. And so he ran a trivia game for me, and I got every answer wrong. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And it turned out he had invented an entire trivia game and pretended I got everything wrong, regardless if I got it right or wrong, just to mess with me. Maybe I was like 9 or 10.
You were 15. You were 15.
I was not.
So the story is true, just the age is not true.
Yes.
Exactly. And the therapist is still trying to figure out how to solve it.
It was everything you'd expect. It was funny. It was a little bit grouchy. But anyway, yeah.
Yes is the answer. Demian, over to you to close.
Look, I don't know if you know this, the first time we have not stopped the conversation to take questions from the audience, because we loved the way it was going in the conversation. So we're hopefully, that was great. And if there are questions from the audience, we'll get those to you, or we'll answer them next week. But we really do appreciate MARLOES taking the time to do this. I know you've got another conference later. Jamie, you can take these silly things out of your ear now and go play with Georgia, the dog, who I think I saw back there somewhere. Thank you for getting up before noon. There she is. Thank you for getting up before noon to join us. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. It was great.
Guys.
Jamie, great to meet you.
Take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
He was definitely not 8 years old. And the way I did it was I would start to read a question. He would jump in with the answer, but then I would change the end of the question so his answer was wrong, to teach him a lesson about thinking he knew more than he does.
Tough love, tough love. I get that. That was great. And I love when our guests cross off.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you get the right guests who have something in common and different perspectives, it works really well.
Really. Inbox, any questions?
Yes, we have a question for Professor Hodari. Steve is asking, with a semester of distance learning under your belt, do you perceive a different level of student engagement when classes are virtual? Are you finding students to be more or less enthusiastic towards learning?
So absolutely less engagement online. We're trying this model. I've got half the students in the classroom and half are at home, and it's the same lesson. And I do a post-class questionnaire each week asking the students, how was class? And one of the questions is, how engaged did you feel? And I would be saying out of 10, I'm getting something like, let's say 9 from the ones in class and 8 something from the ones at home. So still an acceptable number to me. And the difference is not huge, but it's always there. And the students do say they're more engaged in class. And that's part of the challenge we've got, not just at our school, but at other schools, is how do you, engage the ones at home more without losing the engagement of those that have come to class. And the second thing I would say, Steve, is because the students have a choice to not come to class and to stay home, unfortunately, we're seeing, either due to the fear of the virus or for comfort of home, some students staying home. But then what they're realizing is they're not getting the same experience. And so they're coming back to class. And I think they're starting to realize that they do appreciate being live there in class. So long answer, hopefully I answered your question.
Is there no connection to the fact that the people that are actually watching from home can mute you?
They can mute, but then they fail the exam. So I don't think they really want to do that.
Stunning. Any last questions, Sarah?
Yes. So this is for you, Anita. I assume you've been working remotely for some time. If so, how has you and your team's working habits changed during this time?
That's very interesting. Funnily enough, I have a magnificent team, our production team who poses Wizards of Oz, but are actually part of AMA, Grace and Jessica, who I adore. And when I hired them, it was because they would be able to work remote. That was part of the reason, because I was traveling 220 days a year before this. I suspect they are going to be very excited for when I can travel again, because my daily presence, I think, has put more pressure on their lives than when I was traveling. So it's caused a lot more contact, a lot more normality of hours, if that makes sense. But it's also, for me at least, shifted my love and respect for them as part of my team. I am incredibly grateful to them, not just for their productivity, but how they've kept me solid and focused during this year and helped me deal with Demian. So it's been evolutionary in the best possible way.
I think we're almost out of time. I'm going to go real quick with a concern. And the concern is that I am concerned, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, about the future of the ski season in Switzerland and other places. And not just because I want to go skiing and I want to take my kids skiing, but this is such a driver of the economy in so many places. And we haven't yet had a winter of COVID. So we don't know. And yeah, people say, oh, I can ski because I'm far away from people, but you still have to get on the chair or the telecabine or go to the restaurant. And I think with the way the numbers are, and then the winter and things are supposed to get worse in the winter, I'm very concerned.
It's a really valid concern. One of the things, I'm short-term concerned, I'm long-term confident, only because one of the biggest issues in our industry, which you know well, is seasonality and the dependency on the winter season or the summer season. And what's happening now is, as we've seen with the European summer completely collapsing, it's forcing beach resorts, ski resorts, all of these seasonal offerings to expand their offering to be year-round. So I'm hoping it's going to unlock some innovation in a way that we can leverage the opportunity of the ski resorts at a time when the grass is green. So one can hope, one can hope.
Good idea. All right, everybody. It's been a great show. We want to remind you that next week is one of our pre-recorded episodes, and this one's called Let's Get It Started. Anita, you want to tell them about that?
Very cool. Let's Get It Started is all about startups. And we've been having questions that are coming through us in terms of what does it take to take a really good idea and get it invested into and starting it up and turning it into an opportunity, into a business. And so we've got a really lovely combination of someone from a tourism authority, Singapore Tourism Board, married up with a developer, interestingly from Mexico. So that's going to be a really good episode. I'm very excited about that because it responds directly to what so many of our viewers have said. help me understand, how do people turn these great ideas into apps, into innovations, and into something that people are willing to invest in? So very cool. But between now and then, for anyone who has missed an episode, who wants to watch Demian and his brother again, don't forget that we're always on rise-weekly.com. We've got all of our past 21 episodes there, and a few little takeaways like our 100 days, our season end special. But between now and when we see you all offline next week on Monday for Rise and Practice, to our fantastic production team, Wizards of Oz, Sarah, Jessica, and Grace, thank you as always for making this happen. Very impressed that you didn't mute Professor Hodari today. We did threaten, but we got through it. To everyone, as always, we are here for you. Please send us any questions you have. You can see our email is there, riseweekly2020@gmail.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. You're always on our minds. From my side, stay safe, stay confident, stay strong, keep your hands clean. Professor Hodari, to you for the close.
Just for those of you that saw my LinkedIn post advising you that Anita would be wearing black with pink, mixing it up. You can send your, no, you have to wear the pink. You can send your angry emails directly to her, please, here at Rise, and the Rise team will make sure. There you go. Okay, well done. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting us into your lives for an hour. It was a great show, I thought, and hopefully everybody thought so as well. Take care. See you in a week.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.